Welcome back to the Centered on Buffalo podcast. This week we are joined by former Eagles center, co-host of the New Heights podcast, and now currently analyst on ESPN Monday Night Countdown, Jason Kelce. Welcome to the podcast, brother.
Wood, thanks for having me, brother. How you doing?
I'm all good, man. It was fun.
Yeah.
It was fun seeing you in New York. It's great catching up. It seems like you're everywhere right now. Are you
Yeah.
busier? Are you busier now than when you were playing?
I am. I'm busy. Well, I'm busier. It's like inefficient busier. Like
Right.
I'm because everything is kind of disconnected from one another. I'm either traveling a lot or I'm on a lot of Zoom calls. Like it feels like that's one thing I miss definitely as a player, just going down to the facility and like, this is my job from
Right.
8 o'clock to 5. And I know I'm going to be really efficient with my time. I'm going to lift and eat and get my work in. Now it's more like, hey, we got to schedule this out, and I'm just figuring this out. So
Right.
it's been a lot, but it's been fun.
Well, shout out to Emily for keeping you on track.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You know,
No doubt. No doubt. Emily's the hero in all this. Does any part of you wish that you were playing right now? Like, I know, well, I had the carotid neck injury, but I know, like, once your body starts feeling good, you're like, ooh, I could have done that again. Is there any part of you that feels that way?
It does. I mean, my body feels pretty good right now. And I just think there's a lot of you that wants to go back and play because you miss the competition of it. You miss the highs and lows. Like you get that a little bit watching and being a fan, but it's not as intense as being a player. And even it's more like kind of baseline all the time. And you realize you miss that aspect of it. And but I don't think I miss the pounding. I watch it and I'm like, man, I'm pretty happy I'm not doing that anymore.
Yeah. Yeah.
So there's definitely aspects I miss. I miss the locker room. I miss being around the guys. But I think it's in other ways I'm doing a lot of other things which just keep me busy and keep my mind occupied, spending more time around the girls than I ever have. So there's a lot of other blessings that come with it.
I know exactly what you're talking about, missing the highs and the lows. And I remember my first year calling Bills broadcast. I was talking with the Bills GM Brandon Bean. He's like,
Yeah.
"Well, aren't you glad you're not in the locker room after this one? They had a tough loss to the Eagles at home in the rain, and
Yeah.
and it was after that game, and
Okay.
Bean was like, "Well, aren't you glad you're not in the locker room after this one?" I was like, "No, I wish I could feel this. Like as a
Seriously.
broadcaster, I go to my car after a Bills home game. I go out to Jim Kelly's tailgate, have a couple beers, figure out what's going on that night if I'm flying out or sticking around for dinner, and you don't feel it,
Exactly.
And then Bean goes, "Okay, well then come in the locker room after the game." I said, "Well, I didn't earn the right to."
Yeah, right.
All the game, like in the radio booth, like I
Not
don't
the
feel like
same.
I even earned the right to be in the locker room to feel that. So I know exactly. I know exactly what you're saying there. Let's take a moment to hear from one of our sponsors, and that's Dan-O's Seasoning. Let them take your tailgates this football season to a whole new level with their all natural, no sugar seasonings that will take any tailgate to a Pro Bowl level. Get you some at danoseasoning.com. The link to that's in the show notes, or go to a retailer near you. They are everywhere now. Yum, yum, get you some. What are you weighing nowadays?
Oh, I did not. I was doing really good, and then I keep doing really good, and then like I'm in Cincinnati yesterday, and I'm freaking eating these chicken sandwiches and Skyline. Like you load it up when you're on the road too much, but
Yeah,
I think I'm somewhere between 270 and 275.
that's good. That's good.
Yeah,
Just get it off
I'm
the
happy
schedule.
with it. I'm
Right.
not. I initially, and I still want to kind of get down to 260 eventually this year, but a lot of guys lose too much too fast, and it feels like it doesn't fall off properly, or you look
Right.
drastically different. I feel like as I've gone down, I'm like, I feel like 260 is the right number, but we'll reassess when we get there.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And look, you're being paid by ESPN because you were you're a former offensive lineman. Like if you
Right.
no longer look the part, like Jeff Saturday lost it, he looks great, but he still looks like a former O lineman, not like
Yes.
a twig out there where you're like,
Correct.
okay, did this guy play ball? Who is this
Dude,
dude?
have you ever, and I've never even talked to the guy, but former center for the Cowboys. Well, there's a lot of, for some reason, centers in particular lose a lot of weight. I don't know why that is.
Smart.
Yeah, that's right. That's exactly why. Stepnoski, have you seen him from the
I haven't.
Cowboys? Dude, we were at a game and he was getting honored for something, and I was like just jaw-droppingly like skinny, and I'm like, man, that is good for him. He's putting years on his life. But I was like, wow, that's a lot of weight to lose.
Yeah,
Hardwick lost. I mean, there's a bunch of guys that have lost a bunch.
right. Yeah, I don't my wife has told me a few times like, "Hey, you're getting a little too skinny." And I'm like, "Well, I
Dude,
guess you're."
Kylie, I was working out the other day, and Kylie's like, "If you get a six pack, I will be furious." And I'm like, "All right,
She likes the
I guess
cake.
that's not happening." Yeah, that's right.
That's funny. All right, so you were on location for Monday Night Football last week. Bills and Jets, both of them make
Yeah,
marquee trades the next day.
how about that?
What's your take on the Devontae Adams trade?
Well, I mean, big trade for the Jets. Obviously, it's kind of a perfect situation where you're reuniting a guy that has a lot of chemistry already built up with the quarterback. They already have Garrett Wilson, Brees Allen. Like they already have these other pieces. So I think it's probably going to, unfortunately for the Bills, probably a really good move for New York right there. Um, but I mean, yeah, it's a good move. I think it's going to make that offense more dynamic. It's going to let Aaron do what he wants to, which he wants to live in that drop back world and kind of operate in his. He's like such a like perfect thrower. Like they don't do a lot of creativity things offensively, and I think somewhat is like that's what he likes. He
Right.
just wants to operate the system kind of, and he's really been forced into going with Garrett Wilson a lot. He'll go to Lazard here and there, but you can tell when he's comfortable with a guy, he just keeps feeding him. So this should probably be a big move for those guys.
Yeah, I think so too. Now, I don't think receivers their biggest issue on offense.
It's true.
I think it's their offensive line, but
Yeah.
regardless, it puts another weapon out there, and if he can separate quick, he's going
Yeah.
to catch some balls. And I mean, he's one of the best receivers in the game. The Bills bring in Amari Cooper. What do you think
Yeah.
about that deal?
So Amari, super talented guy. You see the talent there and the playmaking ability. He's had a little bit of issue with drops throughout his career, still has plagued him in Cleveland too. But it's hard to know what kind of player he is right now because of how bad Cleveland has been. Like the whole Deshaun Watson thing is just not panned out,
Oh my gosh.
and they've been struggling offensively. But I think it's going to be big for. I mean, right now that's the big thing Buffalo is missing. You lose Diggs last year. Everybody's talked about it. There's not that big time playmaker, and Amari has that talent, right? Like the traits are there. Can he be that player? Who knows? I mean, it feels like Josh tends to get the most out of pretty much everybody around him.
Right.
So I think it's probably going to be really big. And some of those other guys, like the other pieces, are really good auxiliary pieces. So if you can have a playmaker like Amari, now those other guys are even better, right? Like I think Mac Hollins has been doing some really good things. I mean, there's Keon. There's a lot of guys that have been doing well. How about Ray Davis? I
Dude,
did not know he was going to have a game like that. I'm like, all right. We found out like pregame Cook was going to be out. And I'm like, dude, I don't know, man. That's a big loss. He's such a big part of that offense. And then Davis goes out there just running everywhere. He's
just
catching passes, everything.
thumping people.
Yeah. It
Yeah,
was amazing.
so we drafted him in the 4th round, and I'm not gonna pretend like I watched a lot of Kentucky football last year, but I did watch the Louisville, Kentucky game, and he ran
Okay.
back a kick return. He had monster runs against us, so the Bills pick him up on a very limited basis of my film study, which was none, which was just one game watching.
Sometimes that's all it takes.
I'm like,
Sometimes and
"This
you
dude's
and I
good."
both know sometimes when you just see a guy for like a split second, there's always that guy that comes in like to practice like the first day. And there's just something about the way he moves. You're like, that guy's going to be good.
Right. Yeah, and he was one of them. So
Yeah.
he had a big game, and we'll see. I think he'll be a great compliment to Cook. He's more of
Yeah.
the flash, and Ray Davis is going to start thumping. And,
Yep.
with rookies, you give them a little confidence. And now he thinks, okay, I can do this at any point. And
Yep.
so I think it could be a good addition. So you mentioned Josh Allen. You can bring the most out of guys. Do you think he's the most entertaining player in football right now?
Man, it's hard to go against Mahomes,
Right.
just with everything that he's done and accomplished. Or Lamar's right up there. I
Yep.
mean, but he's up there with them. I don't want to like if there's a tier of guys that like I want to watch play every week, like Josh Allen is absolutely in that tier. And um he's just so dynamic. He's operating the offense, but at all times it feels like he's able to have that improvising ability and extend plays and make these magical things happen, which I think is really what it comes down to. Like Yeah, you like watching quarterbacks operate and throw perfect balls, but the stuff that really becomes exciting is when they're doing that plus leaving the pocket, plus extending plays, plus running guys over. Like there's nothing more, there's nothing more exciting for an offensive lineman when a quarterback lowers his shoulder and you're like, oh yeah, I am fighting for this dude today. You know what I
Right.
mean? Yeah.
And I've had this conversation with Josh many times over the last probably 5 years. He's in year 7. Like,
Yeah.
you've already earned the respect of your teammates, but you
You
put
don't need to
all
do
that.
that.
Yeah.
Please stop.
Yeah, we're all good. And he's like, I know, but that's what makes it fun. And I'm like,
Right.
okay, well, you watched way too much Ryan Fitzpatrick film, and Fitz, for different reasons, was running guys over because that's what he had.
Right.
All right, let's give a quick shout out to Prime.
All right.
The Prime Hydration out there killing it. Awesome collabs right now. Check out the ones with Aaron Judge, Kevin Durant, WWE. Go out and get you some today. All right. Do you feel like you have a connection to Bills Mafia?
I think I feel like everybody who grew up next to a Great Lake kind of has some type of kinship towards each other.
Right.
There's a lot of similar, uh, weather, a lot of similar people. Most of the towns are born off of industry and blue collar individuals that, you know, made stuff for a living. And I think it's pretty innate. It was weird. And we said this on my podcast last year. Um, when we were flying into Buffalo for the playoff game, I just remember like even just seeing the lake, there's this weird, eerie feeling that I was like back someplace that I belonged.
Right.
So I don't know. I feel like there is some type of connection with Buffalo for sure, and the fans are just out of this world passionate about the team. And that obviously, as we found out last year during the playoff game, is very infectious. Um, but yeah, I think so for sure. I think that that's like a very Lake Erie region thing. Like anytime you're up by one of those things, you feel like you belong. You're back home, kind of.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. And I'm from Cincinnati. When I got up to Buffalo, I felt at home as well. Cleveland, Cincinnati,
Yeah,
similar town. So
for sure.
I felt the same way. I ask you this in a non-judgmental way.
Sure.
How many beers do you think you consumed last year when you were in Buffalo for the
Man,
playoff game?
I don't know,
And I
man.
was with you for probably the
You were you you
first
were with first hour or so
yeah.
before you had to go to work? Yeah, there was man, the Big Tree Inn was they were passing them out. We were having a few. It would be hard to put a number on it. It had to be. I mean, it was well north of 20.
Yeah.
It was probably in the 30s. And then maybe, I mean, then you factor in the game, you're drinking at the game. I mean, it was up there. It might have been a couple cases. It was a lot.
That's
Including the bowling ball shot with my man Pinto Ron.
but
So
you're
yeah.
yeah, Pinto Ron. Yeah, everyone's like, "Why is he drinking Gatorade out of the bowling ball?" I'm like, "Besides Pat McAfee, no one else can drink on air with ESPN."
I
Like,
know. I want to so bad because they got me out of these tailgates, and that's one thing that like I push for because you know obviously I had so much fun in Buffalo last year, and it
mhm,
was just something as a player you don't really ever get to do, and you get to see all these people and learn. It's not the game is a part of it. The drinking is obviously a lot of fun, but it's more about the people that you meet. You meet the people at the Big Tree Inn that have been doing this for years and the history behind that. And you're giving me the history with Jim Kelly and the guys that used to go to the bar. And
yep,
like, that's all the stuff that's like really cool. And like Pinto Ron's out there and he's got his setup and like you're meeting fans and just having that human connection, right? And it's just a lot of fun. And unfortunately, I'm not allowed to drink on my ESPN gig, but it's been fun doing it so far this year. I mean, I'm starting to meet more and more fan bases, but to be reunited with the Bills this past week with the Grand Poobah was really special for sure.
yeah. We'll have to get you to a game. We talked about this before the game. We'll have to get you to a
Yes.
game, but not a Bills Chiefs game because
No.
look, I understand blood is thicker than any fandom, whatever. You're going to root for the Chiefs and your brother in that moment. So we got to get you back for just a normal Bills game where they're not playing against the Chiefs. So we're going to try and line that up before the
Perfect.
end of the year. We will get that done. All right.
Awesome.
I want to ask you something about the Eagles. And,
Yeah.
that fan base can turn as quickly as anybody on somebody. Has
Yeah.
Sirianni lost the fan base there?
Well, that fan base is weird. You never really lose them.
Mm,
As long as you're still playing and coaching, you can always go up there and, you know, start performing. And like the thing with Nick it's going down. It started last year. The end of last season was obviously a train wreck. This past weekend, he's obviously chirping with the fans, and that's turned into a whole thing. But man, I've seen guys that, I mean, I've been one of them. I've been one of the guys that the whole city wanted out at one point, and I don't like look at that as like any type of negative in the past. Like they are going to be really, really hard on you when you're underperforming and you're not living up to the standard that they hold for their football team. But man, the moment you get that fixed, like they are just like the biggest fans and the biggest supporter of you. And like they will ride and die with you more than anybody. And so I don't think you're ever out with that town. I really don't. I think everything, like they're very much like, hey, if you go out there and get it done this week, all right, hey, they'll announce that they were wrong, or they'll announce that at least you're getting it right now.
Right.
Like they're not going to hold grudges. They're like, nah, all right, we're with Nick. Nick loves us. He loves the team. He's passionate. You know, that whole thing last week, that's, you know, let's let bygones be bygones. I think there's always a correction that can happen. I don't think you're ever down and out with Eagles fans.
Yeah, yeah. And in sports, winning solves everything. So get on a roll,
Correct.
get on
That's
a
right.
roll, and
That's right.
it's all good. It's
No
all
doubt.
good. All right. So I got to give a quick shout out to you and Travis, because anytime I've been mentioned on your podcast, which has been a few times,
Yeah.
anytime I get text from all over the board from people saying, "Hey, my wife heard you on the podcast, heard your name, this and that." So yeah,
Yeah.
thank you for those shout outs. It's given me a lot of street cred here in Louisville and in Buffalo. But you know, Travis gets off to a slow start this year, which when you're
Yeah.
catching balls, it is what it is. Like some weeks
Correct.
you're
Yeah.
covered, you just don't get the opportunities. But he got going last week. You think it's, hey, here he comes again?
I think so. I mean, I think Trav is still talented. He's still getting open. I think that, like you said, sometimes the ball just doesn't come your way, and you just got to keep putting your head down and keep going to work. And you know, obviously, he's getting older. That's the reality of it. But I still see some separation. I mean, he beat a guy, he beat a corner on a go ball essentially, and it's like, dude, if you're still running past corners in the league as a tight end, you still got some stuff going for you.
Yep.
So I think you know, I just don't want. It felt like 2 games ago, so I guess it would have been like week 5.
Yep.
Yeah, it felt like they were trying to force him the ball to really get over it, and then they're like throwing like Pat threw an interception on like a ball. Like clearly, he was really trying to get Trav going early. It's like, man, just Trav isn't fretting about it. He knows the
Right.
catches are coming. Just like, let's operate the offense. And I think it felt like the last game they had before the bye, because they didn't play last week. It
Yep.
felt like they were back to getting to like Kansas City Chiefs, like Pat's spreading the ball around. Juju Smith-Schuster had a big game, and Trav got his touches, and that's kind of, I think, how they need to operate if they're going to be successful.
Yep, I agree. I agree. Well, I can't thank you enough for the time, brother. We'll have the rapid fire episode coming out on Monday. I appreciate you coming on, brother. Always a blast, and can't wait to kick it with you in Buffalo.
Hell yeah, I can't wait.
Yes,
Appreciate it,
sir.
Wood. All right.